Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorary Doctorate degree was conferred upon Wangari Maathai at the annual celebration of the University of Copenhagen in November 2010. Unfortunately, I guess Wangari Maathai chose that the climate in Denmark was not conferring and confiding and abiding to your needs. So you chose to be here in a hot summer day. I quite understand why you did that. And therefore, we will today give you the actual proof that you are now an honorary doctor of the University of Copenhagen. Wangari Maathai, please receive this proof. There are 3 generations of Wangaris or Maathais in this room, and they all do something to do with life. And as I'm the Dean of Life Sciences, I would like to give you, Wangari Maathai, an honorary t-shirt from Life. And there's another generation of the same size, physically, as Wangari Maathai, and this is the second honorary t-shirt from Life Sciences. But the smallest one has a third honorary t-shirt from Life Sciences, and this is for the 3rd generation. So, 3 honorary t-shirts and 1 honorary degree, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, I would like to introduce the Director of the Department of Land and Forest and Landscape, Niels Kok, who will moderate the session after this, the question and answers panel. Niels Kok, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Now, we will over on time, so those of you who have a meeting afterwards, you are allowed to sneak out, but we will take time for questions and comments also afterwards. But first, there's time for a panel debate. And we have 4 interventions in the panel. We'll start with Mike Spears, who is a forest specialist at Danida at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please, Mike.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure to listen to your lecture this afternoon, to see the film. It's a great honour to participate in this event, and to learn more about the links between environment, democracy and peace. Critical links, important issues, subjects on which Danish development assistance has been engaged around the world for some years, many years, struggling for democracy, human rights and a better environment. I could tell you many stories about the projects and programs funded by Danida, but I've decided to focus on one area which I think, interestingly and perhaps not surprisingly, is also the area that you touched on in your presentation. And I realised that the storm that you were mentioning in your introduction was the storm associated with COP15 in December 2009, when the temperature dropped dramatically in the city during the difficult negotiations that took place in that event. One of the key themes which you've mentioned on the agenda at the moment is how to promote sustainable forest management in the tropics, in those 3 critical areas, the Amazon, the Congo Basin and Southeast Asia, at the same time as reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the destruction and degradation of the forests. A scheme that's now known as Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Degradation, RED+, which in your words is actually a scheme which could be considered to be a giant international carrot, a massive effort on a global scale to solve some of these problems of forests. Forests, obviously, as you clearly illustrated, are not only about storage of carbon, carbon sequestration, reducing emissions, but they're also about the livelihoods of the people who live in the forests and in the rural communities, and they're also about the biological diversity. 3 dimensions of forests on which we are working. Danida in Denmark has a long tradition of working on forests, both in Nordic countries but also in tropical areas. And we're contributing to this international RED mechanism through the United Nations RED program and through the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility of the World Bank, as well as making contributions to forest investment programs of the other multilateral development banks. The success or failure of efforts putting money through these kind of initiatives, the success or failure of these efforts will depend on the processes that Professor Maathai has studied and advocated for in Kenya and elsewhere, notably better forest governance and effective arrangements to ensure that the poorest forest dwellers and rural communities benefit from expected income flows to be generated through RED Plus performance-based payments. That's the name of the game. We put our money into international funds, and we hope that those funds will be used to stop deforestation. Prior to approving grants for some of these international mechanisms, Danida also allocated 25 million Danish crowns to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, for a program called the Pro-Poor RED scheme, focusing on a number of countries where these mechanisms were getting off the ground. This project is an important complement to the grants for these multilateral United Nations and World Bank mechanisms, since the funds are being used to ensure that the voices of rural communities in particular countries, Ghana, Cameroon, Guatemala and Papua province of Indonesia, that the voices of people in those areas are being heard in preparing for setting up mechanisms to transfer money to help them reduce deforestation and degradation. We recognise that its effective and equitable management of natural resources is a matter of strengthening the rights of the rural communities, including indigenous people, and ensuring good governance, for example, tenure security, ownership, making sure that people actually know who has the right to cut down the trees and who doesn't. Forests and natural resources are often the focus of conflicts and destruction, as you're more than well aware. I also saw that when I worked in the Danish embassy in Nicaragua and Central America, where Danida has been working for many years to fund the management of protected areas and strengthen enforcement against illegal logging. But the international effort to build effective and equitable RED Plus mechanism, I hope we can also contribute in some perhaps indirect but important way to peacemaking. I look forward to hearing any further comments. This is supposed to be a panel debate. That was more a lecture about what Danida is doing, but I'm also very interested in learning from you about what are the challenges as you see them in building international RED Plus mechanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Mike. The next member of the panel is Vibeke Windeløv. Vibeke is Professor in Conflict Resolution at the Faculty of Law here at the University of Copenhagen, and Vibeke is also the coordinator of the new project, which is a cooperation project between the Wangari Maathai Institute and University of Copenhagen. Vibeke, please.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here and be part of the panel celebrating your honorary degree. My presentation here, or my comments here, will focus on why I think it's so important the work that you're actually doing. What you are personifying is a deep understanding of the crisis that the world is in, not only the African world, but the world in general. And what you use is not only your good brains, but also your very warm heart, and the wisdom of your very warm heart. We all know that the world is changing. We all know that climate changes, shortage of coal and oil, our population, overpopulation, extreme poverty, extreme wealth is creating problems, and most probably will bring us closer to a global collapse within the next generations unless we really do something serious about it. It looks as if we all have the political, the economical, technological insights and knowledge and opportunities to implement reforms that are necessary for dealing with these problems. Then why don't we do it? Or more optimistically, where do we have to look for the key for solving the paradox that we know the problems, we have the tools for solving them, but we don't use them? Professor Maathai, your answer, as I hear it and interpret it, is that we think too traditional. That we try to use the same means to solve the problems that we used for creating them. That we are, with the words of Nietzsche, trying to solve the problems at the same level as we actually created them on. But that doesn't change anything. There's nothing new in creating more wealth, more strength, more power. This is not thinking out of the box, which is one of the favorite phrases of you I know. We could establish a better world, but not without changing what we think. The changes in the outer world are totally dependent on how the inner world, our attitude, our approach to things are changing as well. So we have to begin again, as you said, with ourselves. We have to not only think of the technologies and politics, but also to think of how can we personally, each one of us, contribute and be change agents, as we were just talking about. The world around us focuses almost exclusively on physical reality and takes the focus away from bodies, hearts and souls who are affected by the changes. That goes for the public sector, the private sector, and certainly also the academic sector. Somehow we are all in a certain way illiterate regarding these problems. There's a totally overlooked and unavoidable component in the solution of the threatening and promising situation that we are in. It is a development of the human sense of interconnectedness and joint responsibility. It sounds like soft woman talk. It may be woman talk, but it's not soft at all. It actually requires a lot of courage, a lot of guts, and a lot of insights into what it takes really when you want to get people on board, get them help try to empower them to see the meaning in what they can actually do, each one of them, in solving these problems and their own lives. And what you talked about, Wangari, to empower them and help them, you said empower others, and that we have service not only for our own environment, our own family, but also beyond that. So that requires a total change in attitude. A change where we need to use our brains, but also need to understand the interconnectedness with our hearts and stomachs. Otherwise we won't have the guts, we won't have the courage. Without these changes in attitude, we cannot bring about sustainable solutions. And we have to understand that sustainability is an overall concept, meaning interconnectedness and balance in all spheres, inner as well as outer sustainability. This understanding, I think, is personified in Professor Maathai, and that is why it creates hope that you are here today and that life has the understanding of the importance of your work. It is my hope that the rest of the university as well also will see the wisdom in the work that you are doing. I feel extremely privileged that Danita has granted us money, and I want to take the opportunity to thank Danita for a project that is now possible to carry out in with Wangari Maathai Institute, and with the idea of bridging the gap between research and real life, and to strengthen the cooperation between the Institute, you personally, and us here at the University of Copenhagen. Congratulations again.
Now, we promised the the announcement that this will be from 3 to 4. So those of you who have to sneak out, you're very much allowed to do so, because we will run about 20 minutes over time to allow for 2 more panelists and questions and comments. Those of you who stay will really have a chance to put questions and comments, and we have receptions afterwards. So there's now half a minute to sneak out for those of you who need to do so. And when you do so, I'm just starting introducing the next panelist. Jens Emborg, Associate Professor at Forest and Landscape Denmark and part of the Danida funded project that Vibeke Benedel is coordinating. Jens, please.
However, I'm very pleased to be here with you to celebrate this event. Wangari, and I'm honored to be part of this panel. And I would like to say that as a forester and as scholar of conflict, I'm really fascinated with your idea of planting trees and peace. It's just something that I really like. And your trees and peace approach has now been scaled up with the establishment of the Green Belt movement, and it has been further institutionalized now by the establishment of your Institute for Peace and Environmental Studies. That actually links your practical experiences from the Green Belt movement back to academia, so we can learn to walk the talk, which is not very easy. But also, by planting trees and peace, you have managed one of the very difficult dilemmas of life. On the one hand, we want to stand up for our rights, to fight and win. But on the other hand, we want to work constructively with others to cooperate and share. It's a dilemma. The question is when to fight, when to cooperate. The dilemma is, can we do both in a meaningful way? These are fundamental questions. It's fundamental balances to strike, and yet not easy. We may know in theory why to do it, but still not how to do it in practice. It's not easy. We will always struggle in these dilemmas. For example, when we meet selfishness, corruption, or abuse of power, violation of democratic rights, in short, we don't like it. We feel like standing up and fight for our rights and fight against what is happening. However, the use of power is part of social systems. It's built into our institutions. It's part and parcel of our cultures. It's carried by the norms and practices of everybody. So, if we, for example, want to change from abuse to fair use of power, we may have to work with those trusted persons who constitute our institutions. But these people are human beings like us, and we need to think differently. We actually have to help our opponents to find desirable and feasible ways forward without abuse of power. This requires trust and collaboration. Fighting can easily undermine such attempts. So, how can we cooperate when we feel like fighting? How do we handle when the heart and the brain disagree? It's not easy. But you have actually managed this balance in practice, I believe, even when stakes were high. It could be interesting to learn from your thinking and doing on this dilemma. When to fight, when to cooperate, and what should guide our balancing between fighting and cooperating. I actually know that this discussion relates to the discussion we had yesterday at the meeting about the kind of leadhead foresters who are very stuck in a certain mindset about how to use forest and so on. And we discussed that a little bit. I got really curious about that discussion. But I guess it's about planting trees together. That's one way to manage the dilemma. And I also guess it's about thinking and talking with each other about values. Well, I'm highly inspired by you and the things that you have been doing, your talks, and would really like to learn more. So I hope we can continue the discussions and I can continue to be inspired. It's always nice. So, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Jens. Now our last panelist has been flying in from Nairobi yesterday, Tony Simons, newly appointed Director General from the World Agroforestry Center, ICREFT, with a headquarters in Nairobi, and also, and most importantly, Honorary Professor at Forest and Landscape Denmark, University of Copenhagen. Welcome again, Tony.
Thanks very much, Niels. And I hope you can hear me clearly without the microphone. So we want to share a few slides. You sound like you're recording. Okay, environment, democracy, and peace. And these are a few slides about trees to celebrate the environment. Next. And trees provide two things for us: products and services. And trees are a great environmental indicator because they show how much we value our environment and the state, often, of our social cohesion. Next. And no more vivid is that display in a country such as Cote d'Ivoire, where they had a democratic election, but it was trouble. And where there were problems of peace, and it was the environment that suffered. Next. And when you go to those small communities like this one on the Cote d'Ivoire-Liberian border, Petit Bondekou, you ask these children what is it they want from the environment, what type of livelihoods that they want, because these are the future custodians of the environment, and who most of the impact of the thinking of the panel and Wangari had. Next. And so, let's jump to East Africa to a concrete example. An area quite close to the Greenbelt movement, where farm sizes have got so small that people keep animals in small pens, and it's very expensive to feed them. And so coming up with new innovations such as fodder trees to feed those animals is one of the options farmers have. Next. But how do you reach them? And it is understanding ways that the Greenbelt movement and others seek to get in touch once we have that knowledge with this wide group of farmers. And so typically you would have an extension facilitator who over a 3-year period might reach 22 government and NGO partners, 180 farmer groups, 3,200 farmers to establish maybe 250 nurseries. Fantastic, but it's only a drop in the bucket compared to those 2 million small-scale farmers keeping livestock in East Africa. Next. And so we look to other innovations, and it's about innovating, and you can only really innovate in a space where you feel empowered. And in our approaches there, we're working with 400,000 small-scale dairy farmers. We've seen that it is the master disseminators. It is people that are empowered to reach others so that these technologies can diffuse. And they're motivated largely by altruism. 90% of the respondents wanted to help others. They felt empowered and they wanted to empower others. Next. And when you look at farmers, you think of expert farmers. And it was Wangari and the Greenbelt movement that said, well, it's not just the experts you want to go to. Because 40% of experts are not good disseminators. It is the master disseminators, the people who want to share, who have a passion and a motivation, such as Wangari, to reach others. Next. And let's look at a very key critical part of environment, democracy and peace, and that is land tenure. And we have two types of land largely, the unadjudicated land, next, and the adjudicated land where there is a concrete title. Next. And we've got a study now that is just coming out of 22,000 aerial photographs where you can see the crops, the houses, the trees, the boundaries. Next. And when you look at the investment people pay to trees, to that environment, you see the enormous difference, the five-fold difference between tree crops, hedgerows, and plantations. Just that difference between having a title, a piece of paper that says you own that land, as opposed to saying you have no rights to that land. Next. And it's not going to happen overnight. And you see those investments and those returns accumulating over time from that adjudication. And countries such as Denmark, through Dunedin, have supported wonderful opportunities for those kind of rights of people and links to the environment. Next. We also can jump to Indonesia, where Wangari mentioned the Borneo forest is also one of the great lungs of the earth. And here, if you look at the forest cover in 1990, next, versus 2005, next, and we can type where those changes have come, those land use changes. And if you want to add those up, it was 56% of the change was due to changes in cropland. But those changes in the small-scale farmers, you've got to empower them. And through these things, such as RED schemes, we need training on rapid assessment so that farmers themselves can be in charge of their assets and their incomes and their future. Next. And other options and tools such as this one that has been developed in collaboration with the University of Copenhagen on selecting the right tree for the right place for the right reason. Next. The international efforts, and this one, a wider group again, the University of Nairobi and the University of Copenhagen are involved in a collaborative partnership because the why is pretty clear. The what is nearly there, the where is also there, but it's the how. And it's through more effective partnerships, such as Greenbelt movement has been able to catalyse amongst those indigenous communities that we will see the greatest impact. Next. In 2011, we are celebrating the UN International Year of Forests. And it's not about just celebrating for this year, but into the future. And so next year, there will be Forests and Trees Serving the People of Africa, held in Nairobi at the UFO-Fornesa Congress, to bring together these concepts of environment, democracy, and peace. Next. Just wait, don't click again. And so if we ask people to vote, okay, and this is not UN agencies, or not a trivial popularity contest, but we ask grassroots people to vote. Who is the most worthy, who is the most moving, who is the most inspirational person that has helped us understand the value of the environment? Next. I think you would agree. Put your hands up if you think it is Wangari Maathai. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Tony. Now it's time for questions and comments from the floor. And we have 2 mics walking around. So, who wants to be the first? And you're welcome to stand up, sing, or shout, or just come and comment. Yes, please, in front.
Thank you very much, Professor Maathai.
Please say your name and where you're from.
My name is Garba Jallo. I'm originally from Mauritania, but I'm a global citizen. I live in Denmark and work at Crossing Borders Global Studies at Cradle High School in Copenhagen, north of Copenhagen. It's an honor to be here. I heard a lot about you. I read a lot about your books. I was in Nairobi about 2 months ago, and the first thing I did was to buy your book, one of your latest books. It's an honor to be the first one to ask you. But my question is that these fantastic ideas that you have developed in the last 3 or more decades, have they been integrated into the curriculum from primary to secondary to university studies? If not, what can be done through work with Vivek Vindler and the University of Copenhagen that can be done actually to take the program down to the roots, not just from the level of the university, because already there people have been formed. It's very difficult to change the attitudes of these people to walk the talk and actually to make these degrees useful, not just how to learn how to put a tie, but how to learn really how to develop the siblings and to plant trees and restore the respect of environment embedded in the local culture. So how can this program can go down from the beginning as the core curriculum of the education system all the way up? Thank you very much.
The guy, please.
Thank you very much for your compliment. I think Vivek can actually address this question. That is exactly why we are in this discussion with Danida, with the University of Copenhagen and the University of Nairobi and the Institute. We know that it is doable through the Greenbelt movement, what we have done with the Greenbelt movement. But now the challenge is, when we come to the university, how are we going to make the university people, the professors, the academicians, open up their minds and, as I have been saying, think outside the box and see another way of teaching that could have a greater impact on communities than we have been having so far. Maybe down the road we will be able to say, we thought we should do this, but this is what has happened. At the moment, we are at the very beginning. I know it's doable, but I know that the biggest challenge is the academics themselves. Because it is difficult for them to think outside the way they are so used to thinking. Already, they are beginning to help me develop a curriculum. They have been telling me, develop a curriculum. And I've been saying, I don't have a curriculum. I'm still thinking of what kind of a curriculum is there. Because in the Greenbelt movement, I don't have classrooms. The field is the classroom. The people are the laboratories. The field is the laboratory. You go out there, you learn, you come back to the university, you write, you record, you critique, and you let the world know what you have learned. And in the process, we hope you will change and come to a conclusion that perhaps, especially in our part of the world, there must be another way of teaching ourselves how to deal with our problems. So I'm sure I'm probably in the same mind frame as you are in terms of how do we do it? How do we do it? That's the challenge. Anybody with big ideas, let me know.
And this is also the challenge for the University of Copenhagen. That's why we really appreciate the cooperation with the Maathai Institute. Next question. Bo Larsen, yes, please. Yep.
Yes, thank you very much for your talk today. Yesterday we talked about different things, and we talked about thinking out of the box, and we talked also about teaching-based research and not research-based teaching. I think that could be some kind of a good entry point, at least theoretically, into your thoughts. And I thought about, thinking about that the Cradle of Mankind was East Africa, some 75,000 years ago. We all moved out, some of us moved out, some stayed back. But I have the feeling that now a new impetus is coming out of East Africa. It's some kind of a cultural impetus, which you are basically presenting here today. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about this teaching-based research, talk a little bit about how can we develop tools and places for social learning, because I think that is maybe a very important issue. And I doubt sometimes whether all your ideas and your thoughts can be incorporated into an institute in a classical university. But I hope it can. Thank you.
Thank you, Bo Larsen. Wangari?
I agree. I actually like teaching-based research. And I was saying that even as we speak, we have 3 decades of information that is literally waiting to be explored, waiting to be studied, waiting to be recorded. What we have been doing has barely been recorded. It's captured a little bit in the taking root, a little bit in the books that I have tried to write, but a huge amount of it is still waiting to be recorded. And this is where I feel that a lot of, hopefully, master's students, PhD students who are committed, or the students who want to think differently, can come and do this research and learn on the job, learn by doing. That I think is going to be the best, the beginning. And I think that already with this project, we are ready to start, especially with respect to areas where we already have conflicts that have been generated by competition over resources. They have already been there for a decade or more. So it's a matter of going in there and actually studying, recording, and bringing this information now into an academic institution. But we really do need, even for students, we really do need people who are already prepared to think differently. Because most people look at it this way: you go to the university, then you go out and study. You don't go out and do research and bring it to the university. So I would agree with you entirely. And I really think that's where we will start. I can't see us starting somewhere else. We will have to start there.
Take one more from the floor, and is anyone else, please? One more there. Yes, and then after you, and then we come back to the panel in the end. Please.
Shantali, I'm a great admirer of your work, Dr. Maathai, and I also myself am active in planting fruit trees in Copenhagen, so that we can also have more local food. But standing on this very place, I can't escape the thought that this very university used to be a democracy for 30 years, used to have a democratically elected leader and a democratically elected council, where, as far as I remember, 50% of the votes were for the students. But for some years now, it has been run by random business people in the board, who also elects the leader, with some disastrous results. And I would like to ask you, do you have any ideas of what we can do about that?
I see no one from the board here, so Wangari, you can use the chance and respond.
I think we need, I I think what we need to do is start a miniature greenbelt movement. No, on a serious note, I am quite sure that, you know, sometimes these institutions, especially in this part of the world where you have overcome many of the basic needs and your quality of life is quite high, it is very easy for many of these institutions to lose the original appeal that they used to, because you are no longer so concerned about these issues. And so people just let them drift away because they are not thinking, nothing seriously is being threatened. But unless people felt that their rights were being eroded, they probably don't care who is in charge as long as things are running. Usually we get worried when things are not running, when things are not working. That's when we get charged. But it's very easy in this part of the world for you not to worry too much, because as I said, you have gone beyond a certain level where the basics have been taken care of. Even the basic rights are pretty much taken care of.
We can learn from the Green Belt movement, and I'm sure our rector and our leadership will also join that. So one more question. Yes, please. Okay. This is not any kind of censorship.
Thank you very much. I'm Inoki Bojipong. I'm originally from Ghana. I'm currently in the Sustainable Master of Business Administration program in Aarhus School of Business. My question is centered on two main things. First and foremost, I want to find out from the panel what really has the role of business been in these challenges that we have concerning sustainable development, in the sense where you find that for this fight for resources and the issues of economics and things like that, that are broadly fluffy, in a way that trying to let people be sharing wealth unequally. You know, I just want to find out from the panel what your opinion is on that one and the way forward in that regard. But I also want to throw the agenda